Okay, we are live here, Infinite Plane Saturn Day 3/16/2024. That was Space is Fake AF by Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms. And I wanted to open with that track because right now the Glerfs are gloating. They're gloating while holding up an example of the space program's next major progress forward, the next step forward, which is the Starship going into orbit. So we're one step closer to Mars now. And that's, of course, Musk's Starship, named for the Star Trek Starship Enterprise, I guess. And, of course, there isn't a Star Trek logo on the surface of Mars. Kind of close to the logo from the House of Stark from the Game of Thrones, which coincidentally, Tony Stark, Iron Man, Game of Thrones, Iron Throne, all very interconnected when you look at how the outer space drama, this opera that's unfolding. I mean, it's all just drama, if you ask me, but it's a story about man's next step in our evolution. And Musk is there guiding it. But it has all kinds of media tie ins. You know, like you got Mickey Mouse on Mercury. Mimas, the moon of Saturn, one of its moons, looks exactly like the Death Star, while Saturn is embodied in the character of Darth Vader, fighting Luke, Light, the sun versus the ruler of darkness. Again, this is all just theater, again. All right, we are joined here by the HBIC, Frank Murr, Diana Southard, Verse History, Matt X, Auto Hoaxer, Ted Striker 2112 says, "Oh, became a member. Awesome. Ted Striker became a member of the Blue Wrench Lodge. So I've been thinking about how am I going to make this work? What am I going to do for those who join? Because the more people who join, the more secure I am in investing all my time and energy here. I don't have to divide it. And I'm trying to increase my focus. I want laser-like focus here. So I've opened up memberships, $1 a month, and in addition to live stream notifications, I want to make sure I have member-only content, even if it's I don't like paywalling stuff. You know, I don't want to gatekeep information. However, I do believe in previews and getting advanced reviews from the people who are most committed to it. So I am going to be producing a lot of content that's going to be building towards the YouTube-friendly archive of the IPS. Because I realize most of the stuff we do is just eminently bannable, but we have to have non-bannable stuff out there. And we want to have this because we need to reconsolidate the raft. It's been dispersed so many times. And my contention is once we get them all together, it'll essentially be like a kraken. I think there's a large group of people on the same sheet as us who are tired of being held back by Trutherville. And the members of Trutherville, it's like crabs in a bucket. You're trying to climb out, and they reach in and try to pull you back in. How dare you not believe? You got to continue to believe with us. So I want to talk about a few things today. Planes falling is a narrative continuing right out of Leave the World Behind. So the Obamas are doing it. And again, Leave the World Behind and all the subsequent news is proof that predictive programming is there to prepare you for what they're going to fake in the news, what they're going to highlight. And it might be true. You know, it might be the case that there are incidents of things falling off of planes. Maybe they do have emergency landings, etc. But one of the ways that they create this false worldview is in what they choose to focus on, selectivity. And if you focus on nothing but that, you could just focus on flat tires. If the entire media devoted itself to flat tires, we would think we were in a state of crisis, and it would shake everything up in the tire industry. People would demand new standards, improve the roads. It's about selectivity. This time last year, it was all about train derailments, and now it's about planes. Last year, it was subway violence. And we will talk about the subway Psyop. Was it real? Was it fake? I don't know if you know the story. It was a group of people huddled in a subway cart while an immigrant or someone alleged to be an immigrant battled a New Yorker, knife fight, and one of them off camera supposedly shot himself in the face by accident. I've heard conflicting reports that he was dead or that he's not dead, that he was a cop, and you could hear them talking while they were fighting, and it had to do with immigration politics. That's why I'm leaning towards Psyop. And the way it was portrayed, some have described it as like a horror movie. I watched it and it wasn't exactly horrifying. It was dramatic, and you had the woman screaming, get out," into her phone, which Synchromorpheus tied into Get Out, the work of Jordan Peele, who directed the Jordan Neely psyop, which would make perfect sense. Let's see what else oh, Mars base. We have an advertisement for a Mars base, and they're going to be offboarding 1 million people to Mars. And I hope the Glerfers go first. Get on the Starship. Like I have a feeling that a lot of these early adopters to the space age are going to get loaded up into a Starship. It's going to fill up. They're all going to pay. It's going to be the richest people in the world, just like the Titanic. And I think they'll get hit by a space iceberg, aka a comet. The first Starship to Mars isn't going to make it, and that will quell any desire for people in the future to want to speed Musk up and make this thing happen faster. It'll tamper the desire to go to outer space. I think that's how they will take down not only Musk, but our expectation for better from NASA. Let's see what else. Oh, another thing I've been considering. We could already be on Mars. Not that I believe in Mars, but what I mean is they have such tight control over media and minds. There could be a point where they could just rebrand Earth Mars. Musk could probably do it at some point. And then you would just have to Ministry of Truth style, Mendozel Mandela affect the news, reverse retroactive change everything in a sense where they could make this Mars by tomorrow. And you'd be a conspiracy theorist to say that we're not on Mars. They're probably already working towards that. Also, there's reports that Musk's space junk is messing with the Earth's magnetosphere. Like our atmosphere is going to be destroyed because of space junk. And that's really fascinating because I've been making the correlation between our shared cyberspace, the commons represented by X, and low Earth orbit, another commons, and how the richest man in Earth is ruining both at the same time. Musk's mind junk and Musk's space junk. In fact, I was going to title the live stream Musk's Junk and Our Hyperstitious Reality, and I'll put that in my notes here. I've been looking into this concept of hyperstition, which is like a self-fulfilling prophecy where within a system where feedback reinforces it, a superstition can become real in a sense. And this concept of hyperstition has everything to do with our Psyop enhanced reality. And the more I look into it, the more I find it has a lot of explanatory power. In fact, you know, the term cyberspace was actually coined by William Gibson, one of my favorite writers, who wrote the Sprawl trilogy, largely the basis for the characters you see in The Matrix. And a lot of The Matrix, I think, stylistically is based on his work. But the idea here is that we live in such an echo chamber that a lot of things that you might consider superstitious because there's no evidence for them um, have enough reinforcement socially and through media that you could actually believe it because most of our reality is secondhand anyway. Most of what we believe. None of you have seen nukes. None of you have seen a space station, but we get everything secondhand. We have not been to the news. Think about all the things we take for granted that we have never personally seen, but has been conveyed to us through the screen. Things we have accepted without any kind of skepticism. And, you know, sometimes they're not lying, but it's their selectivity of what they're showing that creates the illusion. So my point is, I think you could describe this reality as hyperstitious, that a lot of superstitions, let's say bowl cut shooters, mass killings in all the schools and all this stuff, you have this belief that there are these angry, disaffected white kids with bad haircuts who are incels, have a lot of resentment, AR-15s, listen to too much Trump, and want to go shoot up schools. Not even believable. And they're always hyped up on MK Ultra, SSRIs, antidepressants. It's the same story. But I'm saying they don't exist. And yet, on the presupposition they exist, we have these hyper-realistic school shooting drills. And this was a conversation a few days ago because in California they recently banned simunition and now require schools tell students they're going to do a drill. So they're no longer going to surprise you with the hyper-realistic drill where they're shooting you with simunition. Unbelievable. My point of it is, they don't exist, but now they exist because you have an entire generation raised with these hyper realistic scenarios where they're hiding under their desks and being propagandized. So these things have become grafted onto our reality. You could say the same thing with climate change, for example. As long as there's something to point to, you can point to the drills, you can point to the news, you can point to the weather reports to back up whatever. And this applies not only to conventional myths, and superstitions. But this would also apply to trutherisms. And one of the reasons I've been railing against the chemtrail thing is that this is another example of a something I would consider to be a phobia, something not based on facts or tested, and it becomes real because now there's evidence for it that they can just look at and point to, and it's reinforced. So we're living in a hyperstitious reality, is my point. Let's go through some comments here. Dinah Southheart says maybe those who stop traffic for Gaia should take the pledge to go to Mars. I think they should. I think they should start donating blood. Like we should start an organization. We'll just call it Astrocrete. Um, what do we call it? Something with Astrocrete in the title, but some kind of Astrocrete blood drive where you can donate blood for the future Mars base. Because if you didn't know, scientists have already figured out that if you mix blood with Mars regolith, it creates something stronger than concrete. So you can literally build your Mars infrastructure because you can't take bricks to Mars. You can't put bricks on the starship. You're not going to weigh it down like that. But you're bringing people. And yeah, your blood can actually be infused into the concrete, even with the lunar bases. Blood and moon dust. My point being, we could probably start a drive and they could start donating blood for the future Mars bases. It creates that bond with the new land, blood and soil. The children of the first few Mars generations will have a lineage that actually does have its blood and sweat infused with the land. Clockwork says, Tim, I hear you being brought up in the Fakeologist audio chat a lot lately. Oh, cool. Hopefully it's more than just Dave J transvestigating me. Duis Impera says, maybe Earth is a sphere and we live on flat Mars under a blue screen sky. Wow. Now that's somewhat believable. I think it was called. Is it what's that show? It has to do with cowboys in space. Cowboy Bebop. I watched it on Netflix and they had this scene where they're exiting this membrane-like sky, so it looks like a flat Earth under a dome, but they're on a much bigger planet. So it's a big ball planet with lots of these flat zones with domes over them, which is what we're going to live in eventually. I think they're going to enclose all the cities with domes, and they're going to say everything else is off limits. Like I think we're moving into a colossal human zoo with cities as cages and the elite as zookeepers, and they will rewild Gaia. Girl says, have we determined whether the shooting in the NYC subway was staged? We're actually examining the evidence. It looks real, but that's not sufficient. You know, world-class actors are often employed in these events. They're not all terrible. They're not all scraped from the bottom of some cell, make some deal. I mean, we've met these types. But there may be some consummate performers. You know, Golden Hoggy award-winning level actors. Duis Impera became a Blue Wrench Lodge level member. Appreciate that. Girl says Trump is, oh, this is sick. Trump is autographing pictures of Lake and Riley and appearing in photo ops grinning with the parents. Yeah, that's his illegal immigrant martyr of the campaign. For 2016, they had another one. I think her name was Katie, where it's like or here this other individual he'd bring out. Oh, my son was killed by these illegal immigrants, and they wouldn't have been here if we had just closed the wall. They do this all the time, and they come out as martyrs, and it's no different than what the left does with their police brutality martyrs, where this person gets killed, the next day they have T-shirts and photos and these massive candlelight vigils and of course Al Sharpton, or you always have these individuals. Benjamin Crump is a big one today. If there's a psyop, Benjamin Crump's there. He's like, we call him Forrest Crump, because there's not a psyop of historical import that he's not at. If somebody says I can't, it's like Beetlejuice actually. If you say I can't breathe 3 times, there's a good chance he'll show up. All right, let's move on here. We're just getting started. I had a list of things to talk about. Planes falling. Again, look, the planes falling thing, that's easily staged, stageable, fakeable. These could be drills presented as real. But for some reason, there's deliberately an attempt to make it look like planes are falling. And the reactionary right-wing programmed response is DEI. It's because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. They keep saying this. In fact, one of the internet prophets I'm still following, I'm going to follow them until the 8th, until the eclipse. If nothing happens on the eclipse, I'm blocking all the prophets. I blocked all the Super Bowl prophets because nothing happened then. But anyway, one of the prophets I follow says that on 315, Taylor Swift and her boyfriend Travis Kelsey, are going to go into the Bermuda Triangle and never come back. So just heads up, we may be cured. I said there's a moratorium on mentioning her, and I've broken that with good reason at least once, but soon it may not be an issue. All right, let's see here. Girl says Riley hasn't even been dead a month, and her family are grotesquely parade her image around as a prop. Yeah, her and Ashley Babbitt's parents ought to get together and have posthumous birthday parties together. It's sick. Like, Ashley Babbitt's birthday, after she's dead, is being celebrated by a bunch of MAGAs who didn't get caught yet for the J6. And then Trump shows up on video and he's like, it's really sad that they killed her. We're going to get that cop. He shouldn't have had a gun. Trump was basically there at her birthday, at her post-death birthday party. And for those who don't know, Ashley Babbitt's not dead. I'd reference everything wrong with the Capitol Hill riots in 21 minutes or less. It was staged. There's jump cuts. There's really choreography there, really poor choreography, but there's also squibs being employed. And the people there, all the different live streamers, are all plants. J6 was staged. It was simulated, not stimulated. It was a simulated riot, not a provoked, not a stimulated. You had Baked Alaska. Oh, this guy's a Fed, pointing at Ray Epps. No, it's a Fed calling a Fed to throw off the truthers. So they don't realize that the people leading this thing, the lead characters and actors, were all Feds. Real people didn't have time to get there before the majority of the action had already taken place. They were at the Ellipse 45 minutes away by walk. So it was a close set. Ashley Babbitt's not dead, and that is a big contradiction for the MAGA types. And so anyone who still has any faith in this political system is going to be faced with some cognitive dissonance. Do I want to continue to be a media skeptic, or am I going to trust Trump one more time? It's like a casino, like a slot machine. Just keep pulling the lever, keep losing, but the next time we're going to win. It's the gambler's fallacy. You're never going to win. It's a losing game. Yeah, the only way you can win is by not playing. It's the only winning move, as they say in war games. We're looking at an alternate reality game that encompasses billions. All right, continuing here. Diana Southard said, remember the previous made crosses with the victims' names. I did some research on that, and there's one guy who does all the crosses for all the school shootings. He does all the names for all of them. That's like, I don't know how many, hundreds easily. But, he sends them out, and I'm like, this is strange. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you go to like a big middle school or high school, you go to the janitor's shed in the back, you might find a huge collection of crosses with a bunch of names on them for some future planned psyop. What a gig. Probably a government contract. All right, let's continue. We're going through my notes here. Again, I have a list of things to talk about. We can talk about any of these things. We'll get to all of it here in due course. CNN did a big hit piece on chemtrails, and it coincidentally follows a lot of the arguments I've made. And I've made my point clear. It's just alt climate change. That's where it's led a lot of people, but it's worse than that. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on it today. Only to point out that the Twitter sphere, the X sphere, is full of chemtrail propagandists, and they all have the same kind of approach. Some random name, random numbers, anonymous, huge accounts. So it's really something that's artificially propped up, FYI. Okay, the new Fallout is going to be on Amazon soon, and it's all about Vault 33. A lot of propaganda in the news like this. Breaking, 3 people shot and killed in Falls Township, Pennsylvania. Shooter armed with rifles may have carjacked person. Shelter in place sent to residents. So sheltering in place has now moved from sheltering in your classroom to sheltering in your home. Very interesting developments here. We saw this last year in the summer with Robert Card, who shot up the bowling alley, which of course had all kinds of fascinating connections to Bowling for Columbine, and it contained all these elements of locking down various towns. Okay, so here's the story. Breaking: the subway rider who shot a man on a packed Brooklyn train, causing people to take shelter Thursday afternoon, won't be charged. Another use of that word, shelter. Got a message from Mr. Trustworthy, who knows the subway. He says, it happened exactly where there's a transit police precinct. Transit police precincts at subway stations are highly atypical, so happening there is the odds of winning a small lottery, probably less than 1 in 33 odds. I notice psyops happening at all those particular types of stations, though. Namely, 14th Station Union Square in Manhattan, where I think someone was pushed on the tracks. And a lot of crime happens at or around that station, which is a very nice neighborhood, so it's not the area to blame. Interesting. You always find drills adjacent to these events, whether geographically or within a time span and really close by. Very common thing. Again, we're looking at this event involving, here it is, a man shot in head in Brooklyn subway during rush hour, one person in custody. Now, same commenter had said, only half the train seemed crowded. I don't even think New Yorkers would be acting like this if the cops were already on the scene. Why are they huddled in only one half the train? Why is half of a quote rush hour crowd empty? My guess is staged movie production. It looks and sounds like a Hollywood movie. And Synchromorpheus again pointed out that one of the principal actresses in this scene, or alleged actresses, the one with sunglasses, was screaming "Get out," which is a phrase that references not only Jordan Peele's work and the Jordan Neely subway psyop, but this right wing talking point of get out of the cities because of the subways. And it's been part of this racially divisive psyop. But again, interesting. I've watched the video and it seems fake to me until proven real. I'm going to go with or lean towards fake. It's certainly fakeable, but at the same time, it's not that extraordinary. But what makes me kind of question it here is simply the overacting and the way that people were crowded. Go through your comments. Yes, half the crowd seemed trained, says, oh, really, you don't say? And I would say, too, I was going to compliment the cinematographer. I mean, they really kept everything in frame. Like they're worried about their lives. There's a shooting, there's a stabbing, there's a fight, and they're more concerned about getting a TikTokable moment. Like, wouldn't they be calling 911? Okay, let's see here. Jennifer Reeve says that they scared all the spring breakers away from Miami Beach for no good reason. Okay, moving on. Nobody knows. Oh yeah, we got a few more wrenches here. Osher gifted 5 memberships. Blue Wrench, Greg R, Me and My Drone, My Third Eye, Lean Dion, IFEPE 73. Thank you. Jamitra 101 says Shelter Island, New York has the 11963 area code. 11963 is where Leave the World Behind takes place. Jennifer Reeves gifted 1 membership. Blue Wrench Lodge. Nicholas Pitts received Blue Wrench Lodge. Okay, we're filling up here. This is great. I 100% appreciate this because we're kind of entering an interesting phase as we go into deeper into this alt reality game, and I'm interested to see where this all goes. It's obviously leading Trutherville into the voting booth, which is fascinating. But I'm trying to get this propaganda box exposed as such. Now I'm going to watch that video again and maybe a few more takes. I did think the stabbing looked real. The woman stabs the guy in the back, and you see some blood. But again, we're looking at special effects as a possibility in all of these things. News from Ryan Garcia, quote, I know for a fact who killed Tupac. I think they pulled him off social media, and they're attempting to get him pulled in for a psych eval. Although, as Mr. Trustworthy says, his fight promo game is A1. Yeah, he promoted his game very well, but I saw some recent video where it's suggesting that he might have promoted it too well. Like at this point, he might have drawn too much attention to himself. Mango Penguin says, I mentioned your society in the Pepe chat. Oh, the frog worshippers. So there's some meme magic there. Okay, here's Elon Musk on X saying something kind of adjacent to what we often say. I pointed out last week how he said people who still follow legacy media live in an alternate reality. And I'm like, that's dangerously close to what we talk about how, yes, we're looking at an alt reality game, a sim, that your mental construct, the map, is not the territory at all, but you wouldn't know because you live in a self reinforcing echo chamber. Well, Musk comes out and he says, teach people to hate themselves and their history, and they are defenseless against mind viruses. They can be reprogrammed with ease. So, what is he saying here? Well, I think he's talking mostly from a political perspective about maybe Westerners or Americans perhaps accepting the scapegoat status for so long that they are allowing themselves to be the scapegoat for everything wrong with the world. I mean, I could see that being a part of what he's saying. Defenseless against mind viruses. And then he goes on to say they can be reprogrammed with ease. So this shows you here that he's actually an activist. He's using X to reprogram all of these self-hating Westerners who have taken the blame for everything, the weather, especially climate change, but everything else, everything systemic, everything they didn't do, everything that people who look like them did a few centuries ago or something, which is dumb. I mean, I have a question for racists out there, or people who believe that you can punish people racially collectively. Do people reincarnate in the same race? Because if they don't, then none of that has any legitimacy. If you can't prove that we reincarnate racially, then collective racial judgments and grievances have no validity. I mean, there's a point where it just it's a little too nebulous for me to go with here. But what Musk is saying here is that he is a believer in the idea of mind viruses, and I agree with this. And when I look at the term mind viruses, I'm referring to catchable ideas, but only by people who are susceptible to it because of whatever, their preparation or their lack of mental immune system. And it is my contention that the general public has what I call maids. They don't have a functioning immune system when it comes to the basic premise established by the news media. Everything they see, they believe. They catch every mind virus. They have maids, mind aids, is what I mean. And the point of it is the elite, and this would include the people who control Musk, his puppeteers, they don't want to cure mind aids. They want everyone to have it. The public education system is designed to give it to you so that you will always be susceptible to programming. The immune system I'm talking about is simply skepticism and a rationally parsing of the facts without accepting anything just because it's current. So, in other words, critical thinking with regard to the premise established by mass media, it just doesn't exist. They don't want you to have that immune system. Like this mind war inoculation that we pro offer here at Infinite Plane Radio isn't handed out anywhere else. And it's not something they want the masses to have. They want you to be defenseless. But they want you to be defenseless against their memes. They don't want any competition. And that's why they work so hard to silence people like us. I mean, I'm still blocked on Twitter Spaces. Wonder why? It's because they don't want me getting into their cyberspace. They don't this mind space. That's pretty much it. Going through some comments. All right, Ms. L says, I thought Tupac wasn't really dead. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to necessarily speculate too much on this. I mean, for a while, I had a pretty convincing narrative that Tupac and Biggie Smalls had been repurposed into a group called Jurassic 5, which does contain something of a joke. Extinct dinosaurs, but they're back. And they had someone else in their group who had also been a part of this band or this new group of rappers, and that would make Tupac, this character, a Kill the MC, which some say sounds like a Kill the MC. And of course, his physical resemblance, the teeth, with the exception of the hair, it's there. The cadence, it could be trained to be a little different. There might be some chronological issues there, some overlap, but that's not always all that difficult to explain away if you're looking at characters that are superimposed. I mean, you can look at crisis actors in general as time travelers. Like, I don't exist. Then I'm given a new name and I'm inserted into the timeline because they put me on the screen. So now I'm in the news. I'm in a news event, a simulated news event that everybody believes is real. And now here I am. Here's my wiki backstory. Now I exist. I've been inserted onto this timeline. It's like time travel. So I don't put that outside the realm of possibility, but I have no reason to believe that he actually was killed or shot like the story goes. Mango says, Pepe aspires the truth, my friend. Now I got my sight in circulation, resurrecting poetry. This is only the beginning. Okay, my only criticism of Pepe the Frog, because I recognize meme magic where it exists, and you can see it. It's very intriguing. I just thought, they go so far, and they ended their journey at the White House as though politics was going to solve this, and I just thought they never went far enough. Which is why if you look at Fepe, he basically looks like the frog, and it's because it is the frog. We just stuck a beak on it to suggest that you have to go further south. You have to keep going. You get to go into the unknown. Okay, let's see what else we have here. So many interesting comments here. All right, let me go back into my notes. I didn't want to miss. Oh, Pi Day. That was 2 days ago. Pi Day, we've already covered this. It's just maybe this is evidence of scripting. You can call it a coincidence, but on Pi Day 2018, Stephen Hawking died at 76. And that's also the birthday of Albert Einstein, who also died at 76. So they tie Pi Day 314 to these two iconic figures, probably fake. Okay, here's what I want to get to. Dead satellites falling to Earth could weaken its magnetic field. Satellites, for those of you who are auto believers, those of you who still believe what you see on the screen, who haven't moved past it, who haven't stepped outside of it, this is a simulation. This is a cartoon. This is an artistic rendering. This is not a photograph of satellites falling to Earth. You have to tell them. You didn't know that, right? You have to almost hold their hands. A lot of these reality impaired types, you got to hold their hands. NASA does it. They're like, hey, look, this is our Artemis mission. It's going to go around the moon for 42 days, but this is only a simulation. They have to actually put it on the screen. This is the simulation. We're not launching for a few more months. Why do they have to put the label on there? Because the auto-believing fools with maids would just believe it. Oh, we just went to the moon again. It's that simple. They see it, they believe it. So they had to tell them, no, this isn't it yet. But anyway, this is not a picture. It doesn't even say it's not a photograph. It says, satellites burning up as they fall to Earth. Satellites surrounding the Earth. Picture. Getty. This is not a picture. This is going to screw so many people. Just their cognition is so jacked because they can't tell real from fake, and they're not labeling fake here. Even TikTok had put out something where they're going to start labeling deep fakes and AI generated stuff as such. Like, this is why I call it the desert of the designated real. Everything looks equally fake, so if they don't tell us what is real, we won't know. Like, which rubber dead kids am I going to believe are real so I can tally up the death toll and see who's worse than the other side? Because I just see rubber dead kids on both sides. Under a worst case scenario, they could strip away our atmosphere. So let me just bring this up because we're talking about mind space and outer space, as in the mental space, the cyberspace, Twitter, X, the commons, where our thoughts go out and could be spread to others. It's been contaminated by Elon Musk and his mind junk, his memes that are meant to reprogram people, but they're all alt-right stuff. So what we're looking at here is a similar story, as above, so below. As the richest man in the world contaminates outer space and starts destroying our atmosphere, he's destroying our collective atmosphere mentally. And I've been saying for some time that NASA has always been about mind control, our mental climate. And climate change is heating up because of people who don't believe the news, misinformation, because of right-wing ideas. That's the scapegoat for climate change, etc. So our internal climate needs to be also cooled. We need to get rid of these ideas so we can cool the climate. This mirroring of as above, so below with their narrative is deep. You look at some of the terminology for rockets and boosters, and it all ties in even to the 2020 agenda, where the Celestial Immunity Project involved astronauts injecting themselves in space while a piece of space junk hits the quote arm of the space station at the same time. So it's like the arm got vaxxed, but it also highlights the need to clear out a space of junk. And junk could be symbolic of things in our collective bloodstream or circulation that need to go. So our clean circulation needs to be ubiquitous across all of the globe. Low Earth orbit needs to be clean for everybody. And cyberspace needs to be clean for everybody. This is a multi-layered agenda, but it leads to one thing. We're living three. Purification process. Continuing here, it looks like we had a little bit of buffering. What were we talking about? Take note of what we're talking about when the buffering starts. I don't have too much more to say about the dead satellite thing other than to point out that there's a connection here between mind junk and space junk, because outer space has always been about mind control. They're not taking you to Mars. They're convincing you that the way they're projecting that we'll live on Mars is the ideal way to live here on Earth. And look, once they get us all into our Mars bases, these enclosed cities, they can rebrand it Mars, retroactively change all the news. Like I said earlier, basically a forced transition. We will be Martians. And who knows, they could execute you if you say otherwise, turn you into Astrocrete. Let me see if I can find the Mars base advertisement. Like, I really want these Gloating Glerfs to go first. What I mean by this, these are individuals who are out there basically flexing on Twitter. Look what Pope Elon did, and they're showing this unbelievable cartoon, even less believable than Starman. And they're like, "Take that, flat earthers." I'm like, "Take what?" It's another cartoon. Like, I don't even find it convincing. But we have an actual advertisement. I'll see if I can pull that up here. Catch up on comments, open phones as well. Breaking: United Airlines Boeing 737 loses panel mid-flight. 4333 took off from San Francisco and had to divert to Oregon. Okay, part of a plane fell. Now, this is a story that goes more or less kind of viral because you have big accounts. This guy's got 1.2 million followers, right? He's host of the No Bias, No Echo Chamber largest show on X. Now, keeping that in mind, let's see what the added context is. There was no emergency landing here. It was not diverted. It was discovered missing after a post-flight inspection. So one, you read the headline, all caps, credible guy, millions of followers, top live show on X, and he's like, planes falling apart mid-air. Everybody's looking. And then later in the day, you find out, no, actually, he's full of crap. They didn't notice till after the fact. And do you see him posting again, breaking news, I'm full of crap. I scared you for nothing. No, they never do any kind of correction. And yet they leave their original flawed reporting up. Why? Clicks, engagement bait. This is just for money. Breaking: United Airlines 737 forced to execute emergency landing after panel fell off. That's red alerts. No, raw alerts. 862K followers. Again, readers added context. So you can't correlate high numbers with standards of evidence. It's like, oh, this person's credible. He's got high numbers. No, it's quite the opposite. They have more incentive to lie. Like, I actually almost want to block them both just because it's so annoying. But I'm also keeping track of the false alerts because I monitor the echo chambers. And much of what passes for news is just rumor anyways. A lot of rumor mongering. Here is something that goes along with what we were talking about yesterday or a couple days ago. We were talking about how Barbie is an icon, is an idol, and she literally represents the whore of Babylon, who's the goddess that the power elite worship, that actually the masses worship unwittingly. And they present her in many different avatars, including Madonna. And here's a Madonna concert where she is, I guess, playing the role of the Whore of Babylon. I mean, it's pretty blatant, but I want to mostly point out the color of the dresses and how consistent this is with the symbolism at the last two Super Bowls and as this icon is consistently represented. Again, this is the goddess that the new age is all oriented around.
Ourselves like a leopard, his feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth.
I think she's just reading Bible verses from Revelation. Anyway, I would never hear about Madonna or Taylor Swift or any of these uh, pop stars, divas, if it wasn't for the conservative media and their outrage. Like, I wouldn't be surprised this audience is just full of conservatives looking for stuff to be outraged at. Like, does she have any real fans anymore? Mango Penguin says Bloomberg are trying to sell coins. Longest commercial ever. Is there going to be a Black Monday? Today's 316. In 2020, 316 was the Black Monday. I think we missed it. There was a show called Black Monday about the Black Monday market crash of 1987. And then 33 years later, we had the second Black Monday market crash. And on that day, 3/16/2020, season 2 of Black Monday was debuting. Some cast members said it was an eerie coincidence. Season 2, Black Monday, as we have our second Black Monday. All just a coincidence, sure. Here's a person talking about that shooting, and the person on the screen I'm talking about. I'll let I'll let this person's laughter speak for itself.
I'm trying to keep myself calm. This is my second shooting. I was on October 1, so this is just
Oh, she was in Vegas.
more stuff in therapy to talk through.
Okay, okay, okay. She's trying to catch up there with Waynell Sexton. This is her second event. Very sad that it happened. Look, I get it. I get it. You know, it's hard not to smile when you have a good payday. If I was directing these events, I wouldn't pay them until like 2 weeks later. Like, look, you really got to sell the show. And if the auto hoaxers are all over it, you're not getting paid. You know, bring onions, do whatever you got to do, but I want to see real tears. I have some ideas as well, but I'm kind of afraid to leak those ideas because I don't want to give them any opportunities to improve their game more than I already have. After 10-7, I think we improved their presentation of fake dead kids. And it's because I was commenting on a line of dolls on the street there with closed eyes, closed mouths. And like, this is a problem. Those mouths should not be closed. Those eyes should not be closed unless they've been prepped, unless they've been sewn shut, glued shut. The jaws especially, those would be open. But after I made a few comments about it, they started bringing out dolls with open eyes. Like, they had a super chat, the IPS. If you're in the Psyop entertainment complex and you're listening for loopholes and little little continuity errors and everything else we're pointing out, you ought to support us. We're doing you a service. I mean, NASA's got, what, a $70 million a day budget? You think they could pay someone to go through their content critically? Just pay a good editor. Pay an auto hoaxer. They could filter your content. Did you know military aircraft in World War II were dumping chemicals on troops and altering the weather by geoengineering? No, not actually true. When atmospheric conditions are right, water vapor in the exhaust will condense in a cloud. When you burn hydrocarbons, you not only get carbon dioxide, but you also get H2O, which condenses into a cloud, a condensation trail. It's not unique to jet engines, but here's a photo of a World War II piston engine powered bomber leaving a contrail. B-17 crews dreaded these trails because they betrayed their presence on the ground to German flak gunners. So for all those who say that when they were kids, they didn't have these and they didn't have them in World War II, yeah, they didn't have them in World War II because they steadfastly avoided those conditions that would produce them because it would give away their locations. They deliberately avoided these. You know, I actually listened to a short podcast today where a chemdoozler was saying something about the Appleman chart and how the Air Force avoided these areas. And it's like, yeah, they avoided the conditions because the conditions cause the effect. It's not a spray. But if you're going through this area and you're going to have hot jet exhaust behind you, you're going to have a column of hot air, which is also being subject to the wingtip vortices, which explains its appearance. But anyway, this again explain or is a photo, and there's more photos for anyone who says that they didn't have these in World War II. Yeah, there's a really good reason why. Another picture here. What are they spraying? That's not smoke. It's water vapor from burning methane condensing into a cloud in the cold air. Again, today's 3/16/2024. It is Infinite Plane Saturn Day. We're kind of catching up. It's been a interesting news week. A few new developments. The next thing I'm looking for, I'm really watching for, of course, is the upcoming eclipse. A lot of people have put their... Did we get cut off? Did we get chopped off of YouTube? It looks like we might have been. Let me check my email. Did I say something out of bounds? Now live on your channel. Looks like everything's good here. But it looks like we might be having some kind of gremlins in the system here. All right, well, I don't know what's going on with the phones. I mean, sorry, with the tubes here. But it looks like we might actually be offline. If there's anybody in the comment section, anybody out there with a pulse, just say hello so I know that we're still sort of live. Fascinating. Not sure what happened. It looks like we've been truncated. That's okay. I'll put the full archive up together. I will stitch together like some kind of an audio Frankenstein monster and upload it in its entirety with as few bumps as possible, as few glitches. I'll try to make it smooth. By the way, Armin Ree was just on JLB, and you may be familiar with him. We spoke last time we were on Discord, but if you haven't checked out the last John LeBon, I think I put a link in the Insider in our X group. Let's go ahead and reboot. Let's get our YouTube turned back on and see if it works. Was it something I said? We were talking about Black Mondays, eclipses, Mars bases, mind junk, space junk. Are we already on Mars? The subway Psyop, or was it real? Are the Obamas sabotaging airplanes across the country? Looks like it. It was a glitch on Twitch, says the HBIC. Okay, well, hopefully the glitch is over. Hopefully we pass this spot. You know what I could do is I could just take a short break here and let everyone show up. Let me see if I can find Chief Crow the Flat Earth Worms. This is Auto Hoax. I'll be back in about 33 seconds.
I'm on Auto Hoax and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless
my buddy and me.
Telecommunications Act of 1996.
96, y'all.
Gonna filter your eyes and scrub your mind. The weatherman, he's just another bad joke. You can be a doom little dog.
Okay, as I said, I'll stitch together all the clips. So every time they glitch us out here, we'll fix it. Gremlins chewing through the wires of the local 5G tower. All right, this is take two. I think Twitch was stable. Adoria the Explorer says I can hear you live on Twitch, but not YouTube. Yeah, it seems like Twitch is always stable. Odyssey didn't have any breaks, so no big deal. Again, I'll put it together at the end. Here's a tweet I got from one of the skyphobes, Dan Stevens, one of my favorite ones. This guy is like the Greta of chemtrails. He says, "Stop chemtrails, stop HARP, genocide, genocide, oh, planetary genocide." Yeah, so this guy's convinced that we're being genocided, but he can't be pressured into, I don't know, filing a class action lawsuit against the airlines. Like, this is beyond hyperbole. And if you say anything about it, you're a troll. But there's so many people who go along with this. Okay, this is one that is probably real. Well, not real, but this is probably not an exaggerated story. There's no community notes anyway. It seems somewhat believable. Boeing 787 nosedives caused by flight attendant bumping the cockpit switch. Again, this is TMZ, which, anything that comes to TMZ is likely a psyop. It's all tabloid. An innocent flight crew mistake likely sent the 787 into a nosedive that injured dozens of passengers. Wow. Are they all going to get paid? But 50 people were treated for non-threatening injuries. Sounds kind of unbelievable, and it sounds like more hype. I saw this story yesterday. A thick black smoke spotted near the Lincoln Memorial. The only reason that's of interest to me is that there's been a little buzz around the Lincoln Memorial. Some pro-Hamas protesters dumped red paint on the iconic stairs the same day that a sniper in Prague left blood on the stairs, iconic stairs, and it was all mentioned at the same time. And of course, the connection to Lincoln. And at the same time, Biden or the administration had just removed this post-Civil War reconciliation memorial. And this is all coming up with the Civil War talk. And the Civil War movie was just screened at South by Southwest. And apparently, it's got some really good violence, like very believable. The story's about a journalist going across the country during a civil war. And the main threat, from what I gather, seems to be militiamen, American militiamen, militias, MAGAs. Roving MAGAs are the bad guy in this movie. That's kind of the idea I'm getting here. Which goes along with Justin Moore, who decapitated his FBI agent father and said he wanted Moore's militia to go take out everybody. So you have this militia rhetoric building up, which all, of course, ties into the characterization of the far right. And they take the bait. They follow the controlled opposition, and they will go into the box that they're put in, and then the entire box will take the blame for whatever PSYOP actors do. For example, they don't even dispute, like Laura Loomer, for example. She doesn't even dispute the stuff. She's like, oh, Justin Moore chopped off the head of an FBI agent. Look what Biden made him do. That was her response. She blamed Biden and his policies for this. All right, we were talking about the Starship launch. Here's an example. Fight the Flatter says, "That's right, Flurfs. Hold in those tears as your wall, WOLRD, comes crumbling down." He can't even type straight. He's just so enraptured by this cartoon. This is like the most cartoonish cartoon I've seen in a long time. Like, does anybody think this looks even slightly real? Like, this is pure CGI. At least with the space shuttle, they would use a real model and photograph it, or use a trick, an optical illusion, where they would record the sky and pretend they're in space and that the sky is the ocean and they're on the tops of those clouds, not beneath them. They've used optical illusions, but they're still using organic, real props, real scenes, real environments. But now this is all fake. This is so cartoony. This is a step backward. Is anyone else at all impressed by this? They'll say this is an argument from incredulity. And I would say no. The perspective that they're not using movie magic enhancements is an argument from ignorance, and they don't even know they're ignorant. It wouldn't even be that. I don't know what you would call it. To not include in your assessment of anything that NASA or SpaceX provides the use of deep fakery is it's dangerously naive, irresponsibly naive. Mousegate alone should have been a wake-up call, but you can't wake them up. No. What is it? It's easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled, but this is a tricky one. You see, it's a magic trick, is what we're looking at. I'm just not impressed by it. They haven't upped their game. I thought the Chinese space station was going to be magnificent. I thought they would have some better special effects. But anyway, they're gloating about it, and they're saying this is making flat earthers cry. Well, I'm not a quote flat earther. I just don't believe these cartoons are convincing. I think they have a vested interest in conveying to us a false world view. For mind control purposes, if nothing else. You think they only fake the news on the ground? Oh, they fake it on the ground. But everything above 62 miles, once you hit the Kármán line, oh, that's just pure science, pure truth. Why would they lie? Imagine if that was sufficient to counter any skepticism. If any liar could just say, why would I lie? Someone just lies to you, why would I lie? Yeah, I guess not. I guess, you see, and that says something about the people who believe it. Good people believe this stuff because they can't think, why would I lie? Bad people think, well, I would lie for money, power, advantage, malice, fun. There's a lot of reasons why liars lie, but people who aren't just intrinsically bad, they don't think that way. And like, yeah, I can't think of any reason why you would want to deceive everybody. No, no reason at all. And that's what you would call the consensus bias, I think. The idea that everybody thinks like you do, and it's just kind of the sense that everybody's as nice as me, which again is a kind of it's a trap. Phones are open 505 349 0420. We can talk about pretty much anything. I'm looking forward to the Eclipse, mainly because it'll give us a chance to clean house. All of these false prophets are going to have to own up to it if nothing happens. As in, this will be proof that I'm right, that we're looking at when it comes to gematria-based calculations or calendar dates separating events used to predict future events. I think I've made the case that what we're looking at here is the implementation of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. And if I'm right about this, and I think I am, if civil war doesn't happen on 4/8, if Trump doesn't get it, if a nuke doesn't hit, if 4/8 is nothing but people enjoying an eclipse, then I think I'll have a reasonable case to say that all of these people attempting to predict future false flags are using a fallacy, which I've already reverse engineered, and we could then make similar predictions that are just absurd and give the appearance of being correct. Duas in Paris says, I paid my taxes, why would I lie? To me, it all comes down to the worldview in the box that we're in. And people who are in the box can't see their own box, but they can see the other guy's box. It's easy to laugh at the wokes. It's easy to look at these people heavily radicalized, but you realize that you share a box. If you're laughing at the wokes as woke, and you're on the other side, they're laughing at your side as Proud Boys or as Patriot Front. But these are identical. They're identical costumes, interchangeable, evidence of a bifurcated Psywar. And it's just team against team. Thank you, Multi-Zero Dagger. We at the IPS appreciate the support. All right, Starship launch here is a video of it. With, what, 33 engines? Very theatrical. Look at that, 6 plumes of smoke. So I'm not saying this was fake from the ground up. And I could argue, well, I wasn't there. And you weren't there, so how do you know? And some will, and I don't like that argument. I wasn't there, therefore I don't know. What we can say is that a launch happened, but we can argue on what the launch is. So I agree with you, a launch happened. I agree with you, you're Mandela affected. I agree with you, you see what you believe to be chemtrails. But we agree that objective reality exists. It's the interpretation we're fighting over. So I agree, a rocket launch happened. Question is, was it pure CGI? Since the 1960s, admittedly by the Apollo 11 launch director, the simulations have been indistinguishable from reality from the perspective of the launch control. So the control room members who are behind the screens would have no way of knowing if they're actually in space or not. It's indistinguishable, and that's from the 60s. So to think that it hasn't improved would be ridiculous. Obviously, it's improved. So we have no reason to believe that anything happened unless you were there. As far as, did they actually send a big chunk of metal high up in the sky? So if you weren't there, you can't make the argument as an eyewitness. We need to break that habit of treating yourself as an eyewitness when you aren't an eyewitness. Bearing false witness. I had that image the other day I posted in the newsletter of a line of people with televisions on their backs, bearing the burden of proof, bearing that false witness. I don't. But what I'm saying is that I'm not a reality denialist. The question is, how did they simulate it? Did they use a cylindrical blimp, a rigid dirigible with fireworks on the bottom, 33 engines, and blast it up out of sight, out of mind, and then cut to a pre-recorded segment where the rocket is in space? Yeah, that's what they did. That's what they always do. Why would they have changed it? The Mousegate fiasco, which they buried, was just showing you that, yeah, the second half is all prefabricated. I can point to many other examples. There's a certain Soyuz rocket launch recorded from space that doesn't correlate to what you see on the ground. The time lapse in space doesn't even account for the gravity tilt. Anx G says, don't you know the sky is falling because my gematria told me so? Yeah, well, these anonymous doomsday prophets with their gematria calculators can stay in Trutherville. There's a reason why I'm studying them so closely. Because sometimes I find patterns useful, and I'm like, okay, I like these patterns, this is neat. However, the problem is, we're examining patterns as they appear. They're introducing more and more, and their argument is that this is so complex, man could not have done it. These coincidences are so great that only through using the language of Kabbalah and God and these mystic calculators can we see the big picture, and it's huge and it's big and it's AI, it's an alien, it's... No, I'm sorry. What they're doing here is they're mystifying a very simple to understand propaganda technique, repetition. Hey, we're going to fake nuke them again sometime in 2025, and we want them to accept it as inevitable. What can we do? We'll have it in all the news stories as a threat. Have it in all of the science fiction movies. Constantly refer to it. Put it in all the fiction, put it in all the video games, make this the worst case scenario in all movies, so it's always there as a backdrop. Simulate it convincingly in a blockbuster film, make everybody watch it. Sear the image onto their minds, accompany it with the fear, give them a character like Putin to constantly dangle the nuke threat. Eventually, everybody's believing it as plausible, inevitable even. Then when they say, oh, it happened, we're like, oh, we were expecting that. They're setting our expectations. It's as simple as that. Man is writing the news in advance, and man is experiencing it. Not everybody is in the know about how scripted it is. But the scripting is easy to understand. It's just propaganda. Why would they limit themselves to real-time propagandizing us and trying to convince us of things real-time when they could take even greater levels of control? Editorial control. They edit, they curate our realities. But to throw in all these additional, quote, proofs of some kind of order is what I'd call an example of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, meaning they find a lot of hits. So if you were to take a gematria calculator and go through 1,000 Wikipedia articles, you could find 10 or 15 hits that specifically tie into what you're talking about. Now you draw a circle around that and a bullseye right there, and you're like, look, I got 5 bullseyes. I've established a pattern, and there's no way that these are in any way organizable by man. This could not be orchestrated. This is synchronicity from God or a higher power. And right there, what you do is you're like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. The Wizard of Oz is real. Let's take it literally. Let's fall for the second. What is it? The second law. Arthur C. Clarke. He's like, any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic. Let's just consider it to be magic. And I don't agree with that line of thinking, obviously. Like, if you're at a magic show and you can't figure out how the trick is done, is your default position, oh, it must be magic? No. It's, wow, I can't figure out how they did that magic trick. So I've been looking at predictive programming and fake news for some time, and at no point did I say, this is so unexplainable that it must be magic. It must be collective manifestation. Like, these are all ideas that are fascinating to entertain, but when it comes down to it, when we're actually examining the facts, Occam's razor kind of helps here. The simplest explanation actually suffices. We don't need all this extraneous stuff. All of the patterns are a testament to how scripted it is in its storytelling. I don't think we need to make it any more complicated. Moreover, I don't think we need to exonerate media. Part of this idea that all this stuff is just synchronistic and organically happening and it happens to fit these patterns is that the media are objective reporters who are just, look, events are happening, let's go record it and tell everybody what happened, let's show them. That's not what's happening. They are creating these events. They're prefabricated. It's not even a stretch to say that they write our news in broad strokes 50 years in advance. 9/11 was planned at least 30 years in advance. Not every single news story, but as an umbrella, big stories. Like, for example, by 2030, climate change will be this bad. And they're projecting this from, let's say, the year 2000. By 2020, we'll have to prepare people for this big event. So we're going to have a lot of zombie movies to program people to run into their homes in quarantine. You see what I mean? If you look at their propaganda and the zeitgeist that it creates, or how it paints up the zeitgeist, you can kind of see how it mirrors, like they say, life imitates art, but the art I'm talking about here is the psyops. Life imitates psyops. And the psyops imitate the art, and that's because they're from the same place, the psyop entertainment complex. Mind control is really the big overarching theme here. Government, entertainment, media, academia, these are all just substrates of mind control itself. Let's go through your comments. Duos in Paris says, I'm not anti-box. Look, I'm not anti-box either. I'm just not a literalist. Like, I like the Bible. I like all the holy books. For their aesthetic value, the wisdom, accrued knowledge. There's nothing to hate about it, to be honest. But my argument is with religion and the framing of it and the literalism that buries, I think, what's even more profound and incredible. To me, the most incredible thing about the Bible are the astrotheological alignments. That's incredible. That's a work of exceeding genius, honestly. To be able to tell these stories using these symbols and allegories and metaphors that all relate to the macrocosmic cycles, it's incredible. Ted Stryker said, I heard a panel fell off a plane, but no one was injured. Yeah, exactly. That's the one I mentioned earlier. They didn't even know the panel was missing till after the fact, and there was not an emergency landing. And Nofal says, are they going to use the nuke to do lockdowns? I think they'll want to lock us down first, so we're all glued to our screens. Leave the world behind ends with a nuke, but the title is an anagram for Behold, the End War Live. So what I think the script is, they will use riots, they'll use emergencies of some kind to get everybody home, glued to their screens. Then they will do the nuke when we're all watching. 9/11 wouldn't have succeeded if we had all slept in that day. We have to be synchronized. That's the key here. They can press a red button and they can reset our reality. The 1946, we know what the nukes did. They obliterated objective reality. The introduction into our collective psyche, into our collective worldview, the world annihilating atom bomb obliterated objective reality. It'd almost be like, hey, we have a new god. We'll just this new god manifests as a mushroom cloud. And if we don't obey this god, we're all going to be destroyed. So we all have to organize around our fear of this new god. Well, nobody would believe it because we're not superstitious, right? Wrong. And what they have done is they have introduced a god that science can identify. Same thing with 2020. They brought us a devil that even the atheists will believe in. It's a it's a construct. Okay, moving on here. Dwayne Garrett says, I'm convinced they steal fanfic conspiracy theories and use them against the people who create and believe in them. Essentially, they're writing their own horror movie. Yeah, they take inspiration from us. Well, I've been reading up on this concept of hyperstition, and I think it has great explanatory power for what we're talking about. Because what you're talking about isn't that what we believe becomes real. I mean, 7 billion people believe man landed on the moon, and it's still fake. Yet, it exists. It's real in our worldview. It frames the collective accepted frame of reference and all the art that's created, all the science. Everything's in that box. We live in a propaganda box. I mean, some of us have transcended it. Some of us have stepped outside of the screen. Some are still saddled, anchored to a few narratives, tethering them to the false construct, but they're cutting away, I believe. We are a breakaway ecosystem. But this idea of hyperstition suggests that if something doesn't exist, but a lot of people believe it's real, and they're given a lot of feedback to reinforce it, and they act as though it's real, it becomes real. Every single religion, you could say, is an example of this. And it doesn't even have to manifest in an actual like egregore, like something is actually there. But the belief in it creates the infrastructure for it, and most people get their reality secondhand anyway, so it might as well exist. It's really incredible, the power of belief and the thrall it has over man, over humans, over how we're just subject to this stuff. You see why non-believers are, I think, ubiquitously hated. You see, we're not conspiracy theorists. If you're a skeptic, if you're an auto-hoaxer, you're a non-believer in the de facto state church's mythologies. You don't trust their priesthood. In fact, you don't believe in their God construct. You're an atheist to their false God, and they hate you for it. I mean, look, they try to take away your free speech, a fundamental human right, and they want to cover your mouth. When I first saw the face diaper, I was like, yep, that's an emblem. It's a symbol, it represents something here. And it's about not spreading those mind viruses. Only state-approved mind viruses, and you don't need your face anyway, because if you're going to emote, we have a wide array of emojis here to express yourself with in a safe way. And of course, we have inclusive emojis, pregnant emojis, mpreg emojis, but any emojis that are deemed offensive, they obviously are going to pull. So what they're doing is they're giving you approved emotions and emotions that are non-approved. We have to do it for safety's sake. Mind masking. Angst G said, did Boeing really put a hit on their whistleblower? It appears to be so. I mean, what is that? I heard that story. You had someone from Boeing, an alleged whistleblower, and he said something along the lines of, if I die, if something happens to me. A Boeing whistleblower found dead after raising concerns. This was 5 days ago. John Barnett found dead in the U.S., raising concerns about their production standards. The 62-year-old had died from a self-inflicted wound on 9 March. They just confirmed it. He worked there for 3 decades. He said they had been fitting substandard parts to the aircraft production line. That was back in 2019. And there was something more recent he had said. I'll see if I can find it. But there is talk here that he's a whistleblower on this. Again, I think it's a psyop. I think it's the media being selectively attentive to it. Possible drills. All this stuff could be conducted by drills. You know, live drills. Those people on the plane, you don't know. Could be a bunch of actors. You know, we got to have a drill where we drop this and test the response. I'm going with real until proven fake, and if you know something I don't know and you want to share, call in and let us know. Yep, I have reason to believe this is real. But those of us who have been very doubtful and skeptical and who suspend judgment have been vindicated so many times. Okay, moving on. Again, the story of dead satellites falling to Earth. I was reading some of this article and it's not even believable to me. Some of the quotes in here, some of the things they say. I was shocked at everything that I found. Nobody was studying this. It's really alarming. Private satellites have caused damage and have already caused issues for astronomers, but the key word here is private. You see, we're talking about the richest men in the world screwing up space for the entire world, for everybody else. But I was going through some of the pull quotes. I have some quotes here for you. I was going through this article, and some of the statements they make seem like hyperbole. We've never seen this. But what they're saying is that all this spacecraft dust, all of it's going to end up interfering. Says the increased levels of radiation could strip our atmosphere. Good to know. Musk, again, scraping away at the atmosphere, even as this spacecraft dust is tearing away at our skies. His mind junk is tearing away at our mental atmosphere. That's the point they've been making. Now, I've been saying, too, that this Starship, this is my prediction. It's going to be one of two things. Either they're going to succeed in sending 1,000,000 Glerfs to some subterranean, deep underground Mars base in China, or they're going to load up a bunch of, well, obvious actors into a Starship, and we'll have a Challenger / Titanic-like event in the sky that will kill the desire for space migration for the next 1,000 years, which will really take the pressure off of the NASA CGI department. They must be so stressed trying to meet our standards. Dewis in Paris says it must be quite a power trip to be able to create everyone else's perception of reality. Absolutely. And religions have been doing this forever. You know, religions have always been able, that's what, when I look at the black monolith, I look at that as the screen, which that's actually what it represents, the movie screen, the merging of our reality with the state constructed internal reality. So your internal worldview is augmented by what they give us. And we have been studying what they give us, and it's all mind warping Psywar, puts us into a alternate reality game. But you could also look at a holy book, and it's interchangeable. They all do the same thing. It could be everyone live your life according to Dianetics. Everyone live your life according to the Quran or the Book of Mormon. And you go down the list, and there's basically a worldview accompanying each one. And if your basic premise is everything in this book is necessary to know, everything outside of this book is heresy, we don't need to know, and you create a closed system, you would have completely different results. You know, these are world views. This is like a doomsday cult in a bunker. You know, it becomes an echo chamber, and of course, these, like a church, for example, for a temporary time on a Sunday, becomes a literal echo chamber, where it's only about what's in the book. You're not mixing it with other stuff. And what I'm suggesting here is that worldview creation has been one of the main ways that the power elite have organized the masses forever. The lie world order. The movie The Village shows this perfectly. The elders lie and say, oh, we're not in the 20th century. This is like 18 something. And there's nothing outside of this village. Just some wicked people out there. And then they build an entire world where they're happy. They are living this idyllic lifestyle with no idea of the horrors of modern life, which they have been quarantined from. But what we're seeing now is the new universal religion is being implemented through the use of mass media, and the media itself has become the de facto state church. That's been my premise for some time. Space as the new heaven, because it rises above all of the various, local competing versions of heaven and paradise. And Space is a heaven that the atheists who embrace scientism will also believe in. It's a total power trip. It's this mind control. I think it's a greater power trip than just having access to a big bomb that can blow everybody up. No, they have access to reality control, the ability to fake something into reality, perception management, including billions. I mean, this is a high-tech religion, is what it is. So here's a conversation I had with Psy Girl in Gilded. Just a few points here. Psy Girl says media narratives may be fake, but corporate state extortion and the omnipresent threat of coercion and state violence is deadly real. Let's see what it takes for the kinetics of a credible threat to manifest on the streets. Now, I agree the narratives are fake, and fake has trumped real. They can use the fake stuff to influence reality. But do the fake things ever become real? Does it ever go kinetic? And this is where I say no. I think the reason why is that we've already been conquered. We're already an apathetic population. And there's no chance of everything falling apart because everything is under total control. Like, oh, they're going to get our guns. They already got your minds. They don't need your guns. And if there was a time to do so, if there was a time where, oh, look, they instigated so much that it's going to go kinetic, it would have been 2020. The MAGA would have risen up. They'd be like, let's stop the riots. But no, everybody just sat and stared at their screens. And there's one other point I made here. Girl had said, I care less and less about the narrative and more about the things like the price of gas, safety of the food and water, taxes, local reports of car theft and carjacking. What me worry. And I can agree with that. The real threats are always there. And those are the ones that matter, not the ones that are fabrications and hyperstitions. And we also have to remember, too, that fakery controls this reality. So we can't dismiss that the main instrument of control is worldview fabrication and the fakeability of anything. That is one of their main powers. And in this regard, we've been talking about X and Musk and mind junk and mind control and how this is a new system that's really built on the old system being updated. And if you look at the iconography, and I'm always talking about Noah becoming Noah, but look at the symbol of the cross or the X and the dove. And juxtapose it with the symbol of the Twitter bird and the X. And what I'm suggesting is that these are both emblems of the state religion and its mind management. And the whole idea of Musk taking over X has everything to do with his role in the space program. He's the Martian Pope. We're entering into this new age. And the fact that he's the owner of X and the guy who's the first colonizer of Mars has everything to do with one another. We're talking about the new world, the new starting point. When we go to Mars, we're going to have to shed a lot of the things that have been detrimental to our life here on Earth. So on Mars, you're not taking a carbon footprint. You're not taking private property. You can just go down the list. No MAGA hats, no AR-15s, no big trucks. There's a lot of things that aren't going to Mars because we have to purify and find the perfect and sustainable way to live. Similarly, they had to get rid of heretical texts and apocrypha from the Bible and streamline it into one simple worldview. Well, what X is doing is it's going to do for our commons, our shared cyberspace, what the Mars base is doing. It's going to offer something sustainable and safe that does away with anything that would in any way threaten its perpetual survival, which means we have to get rid of hate, for example. And even though Musk is here opening the floodgates to hate, I think ultimately he's a fall guy for free speech. And they're going to say, look, you let the richest guy in the world ruin outer space with all this space junk. You let the richest guy in the world destroy this public town square, this public commons. Okay, moving on here. Toronto police tell residents to leave their car keys by the front door to avoid confrontation with thieves. Quote, they're breaking into homes to steal your car. They don't want anything else. So this is a new auto theft. It says prevention tactic, but it seems like enabling tactic. Yes, they're coming to steal your car, and if you have your keys in your bedroom, you might unnecessarily confront them. So just put your keys near the front door. You might even want to label it.
Advice for all vehicle owners. A message echoed by Toronto police speaking at an Etobicoke safety meeting last month. Constable Marco Ricciardi had a new message for vehicle owners who keep their fobs in Faraday pouches.
To prevent the possibility of being attacked in your home, leave your fobs at your front door. Because they're breaking into your home to steal your car. They don't want anything else. A lot of them that they're arresting have guns on them, and they're not toy guns, they're real guns. They're loaded.
That's why Galinsky says they will be installing the door stops and taking YPR's advice seriously. But she'd like more action from police.
All right, there you go. Do they have any helpful advice that would make it easier for pickpockets to get into your wallets? Very interesting. Maybe we should wear our passwords on our shirts. You know, our maybe even our keys for our different crypto wallets, because you wouldn't want, someone to be inconvenienced while trying to mug you, and they get mad, and then it escalates. You got to appease the irrational and the violent. Isn't that how we keep things civilized? Aaron Rodgers responds to claim that he's a Sandy Hook conspiracy theorist. I hate to even say SH because I get ads from SH parents, and they're like almost targeted. They're almost targeted. Like, conspiracy theorists have ruined our lives. Will you donate money to us? And I'm like, you're wasting your ad money on the wrong person here. Like, I'm not talking about it in the same way that you are all talking about it. Dimitro 101 says, put all your valuables in a basket and leave it on the deck. Yeah, that's what I would do. I would just leave the keys in the ignition. All right, let's move on here. Look, I've dealt with this stuff. I mean, this is real. I've never seen a chemtrail, but somebody stole my catalytic converter. And then they came back and they tried to steal my car. And they actually try to hotwire it. But I have a club. I'm in the club. I have one of those wheel locks. And if someone steals my car, they will send me $2,000. Like, they're so confident that nobody can steal it now. But we've had issues with that here. And that is real. Like, I'm not a denialist. I do believe that there are, I know for a fact, that there are psychopaths, that there are unbalanced people who do represent a threat to us. But I do not feel threatened by any of the media constructed bad guys out there. I'm not worried about bowl cut shooters, for example. And if you subtract all of the things you're supposed to fear from nukes on down, you're not really left a lot of things to fear. And what's so bad about that? Is it that you're not in a state of readiness at all times? Do you need to be? I would say no. I think part of the purpose of the Psywar is to keep you cowed, to keep you on edge, to keep you in a defensive crouch, like being God-fearing. I was never God-fearing. As a kid, I thought the concept of God was scary, that he's reading my thoughts and all this stuff. And later, though, I started thinking, why should we fear God? Why should we live in a state of fear? And, I read that sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, and you can see where people would arrive at this. Like, it's pretty terrifying from that perspective, but I was never really a God-fearing person. I feel like that's just a way for the church to get in your head and the pastor to make you think you're in the end times, so why invest in the future? Just give money to the church, etc. And they can keep this racket going on indefinitely, and they have. But then I think this may be the same tactic where the media wants you to be globe-fearing. You better recycle or globe's going to flood you. But if you don't believe in Gaia or climate change, they have alternative fears. So in all senses, you are always in a state of fear. It's about to go kinetic. It's about to end. The sky's about to fall. This is the worst time ever. It's about to go down any day now. FCC denies Starlink low Earth orbit bid for lower latency. So here it's already happening here. Space Wars. Elon Musk wants to launch more of his Starlink satellites in the same area where the space station is. Kind of close. It says here SpaceX may not deploy any satellites designed for operational altitudes below the ISS whose orbit can range as low as 370 kilometers. So far, they have 6,000 out of 42,000 they want. What it says here, if you fill that region with tens of thousands of satellites, it'll put a bigger squeeze on them and compromise your ability to serve the space station. So Musk is about to block access to the space station. That's what they're worried about here. Now listen to this. There's a persistent stream of things coming down like old CubeSats and debris. It's a constant rain coming down. There's a constant rain of dead satellites. It says here, even if you're below the ISS would be within range of debris clouds for a collision at 350 kilometers. You would have a very violent collision, and that's what we're looking at here basically, is Musk is possibly going to get in the way of the ISS. So they can't let him put his stuff there. Aries 1 became a member. Blue Wrench Lodge, thank you for joining. And if you don't know the history of the Blue Wrench, when we started this conversation in 2016, 2017, the Infinite Plane Society chat room, I realized that this whole area of discourse was targeted by trolls and a lot of just people acting in bad faith who were just disruptors. And I thought, we're engaging in it's fun, but it's also kind of serious. We do have a point here. And we don't need distractions from the points that we're trying to reach. We're trying to get to some understanding. So we needed quality control. And I was too busy to moderate every troll, and I didn't want to constantly spend my time calling out trolls. So what I said was, here, everybody who's part of the IPS, who accepts the premise that everything is fake until proven real, that we can't trust the media at face value, etc., if you're on this level, have a blue wrench. You're a moderator. So we had a chat room full of moderators, hundreds at one point, 400 wrenches in the room. And the rule was, anybody who comes, we have enough people. We don't need anybody else at this point. So if anyone shows up, ban them immediately. And if they really care, if they really want to be a part of this discussion, they can email me at infiniteplanesociety@gmail.com. I will pull them out of the dungeon and give them a wrench. So every new person would show up, get banned, get pulled out, and then be moderated. It became kind of a hazing or an initiation, but it was quality control. That's what created this think tank, because now we got rid of, and it wasn't about everybody agreeing. We just got rid of people who weren't there for constructive purposes. And it used to be highly disruptive. If you weren't there in the early days when the topic of NASA criticism really started blowing up, you couldn't have calm conversations. There were roving bands of trolls, and you don't see them anymore because they've been smashed into pulp by red wrenches. Many of them turned red, or blue wrenches turned red. We were basically at war with trolls for, how long was it? Like a couple years before eventually a lot of them joined us. A lot of the trolls began to see the point. Not all the way. I mean, some of them are still, clinging to certain things. Richie from Boston says that he's found proof straight from Noah. Now, he's not talking about Noah with the ark and the dove. He's talking about Noah with Arkstorm that uses a dove as a logo. NASA's Noah, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, who tell us that if we don't change our ways, globe's going to flood us. Oh, you can laugh at Noah, but you won't be laughing when the ark doors shut. So this is an example of an old, ancient, archaic myth repurposed and served to the cult of scientism, and they believe it. This is ironic. The people who don't believe in God, who laugh at your silly Noah's Ark myth, they laugh at the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, because he believes there were dinosaurs on the ark. Like, it's funny that he believes in the ark. It's funnier he believes there were dinosaurs on the ark. And if there were dinos on the ark, where are they today? They would have survived, right? Did they not procreate while they were at sea for 40 days? What did they do with their time? But what's funny is the people who laugh at that, oh, arcs are funny, God flooding us, oh, that's funny, that's Sunday school stuff. They believe in their new flood myth more than normal Christians believe in the ancient flood myth. Like they take this one literally. So you have the myth literalists in the myths of scientism laughing at the people who look at myths as myths. Like nobody really believes in Noah's Ark, like literally. But people believe in climate change literally. And I'm saying these are identical, they're interchangeable. One of them represents the progressive, new utopian view of the world, and the other is from the more traditional view based on the old school fake news. Commenter says, I have not seen any of the so called elites. Maybe they all have gone. Well, you wouldn't know. Like, oh, George Soros, Elon Musk. Like, who are the elite? If when we talk about this group a lot, and maybe it's useful to point it out that we don't know. You can't point to any ethnicity, any country. All we can point to is the infrastructure of mass mind control, which would operate the same no matter who's in control. Could be Satan himself. He's the director of this thing. We're seeing everything through his viewfinder. Or it could just be a department of NASA that has central control over worldview. But the elite are the entrenched powers that write history, that have final editorial control, and that ostensibly control media. But it would be who controls government because it transcends media. It's bigger than who owns the media. Like I said earlier, media, academia, entertainment, these are all just subcategories of just mind control itself. Even government is mostly just a mind control illusion. There's no real power for you in it. Think about it. Every single politician believes in the fake moon landing. Every single politician will walk the party line when it comes to the official worldview approved for history. And one of my contentions here is that we live in a news bent reality, and many characters we can point to, like Donald Trump, for example. Yeah, he lives, he breathes. There's a real person there. However, he's a reality TV show actor, and he's living out a role that was already created. He's in a very important historical role as a historical personage, but he's not rogue. He's not a loose cannon. He's not doing his own thing. He's in a Truman Show, but voluntarily. He's not tricked. He's insulated, sure, but he's in a reality TV show acting out history that will go down in the books. Like what I'm saying is, they do have a great deal of control over our reality because they write our history as we go. I mean, what is history but media going back in time? And Nulfo says, well, there is an ethnicity that controls both government and media. Well, that would be the red herring. Because if you fall for that explanation, you will fall short of seeing the big picture. Like, oh, well, this little group controls government and media. Well, you could say that, and you might find a lot of content to reinforce it, but then you miss the bigger control, which is bigger than any one group. And the people who fall for that fall for everything else, meaning they don't know the news is fake. That's why I don't even platform or talk to or spend any time talking to people who think they figured it all out. And it's like, oh, we can blame it all on this group. This group did 9/11. I'm mad at them. You're mad at Israel for doing 9/11. 9/11 was a bad movie. So you're mad at them for a bad movie, or you're mad at them for blood. You think they killed 3,000 people. Because if you think they killed 3,000 people, you are in the MSM box, and your opinions are invalid. And still, I think what we're also not really clear on is we don't have we don't have enough information to arrive at that conclusion. The whodunit red herring chase never arrives at the what is it. I've never met somebody chasing a red herring, a scapegoat, who knew how fake everything was. In fact, they're the ones who are saying it doesn't matter that it's fake, or it's inconvenient to their worldview that it's fake. In fact, one of the most vocal opponents to what we do here has always come from the Nazi types because they don't like me saying nobody died at fill in the blank. specifically 9/11. Because if you say that, then they can't be mad at their chosen scapegoat. They can't claim to be a victim. Anyway, back to Richie from Boston who has chemtrail lung. He says he's been sick for 5 days because of chemtrails. Not from the vape. Yeah, he vapes. He's a chronic vapor. I look at his Jeep. It's like, did somebody spray chemtrails in there? Nope, it's all his vape. But no, he's sick from the clouds, not from his vape pen. But he says, I got proof straight from NOAA, which is like saying I got proof straight from NASA. They control the weather exactly like we have been telling you for over a decade. So Richie from Boston has adopted what I call alt climate change. He's a chemtrail Greta. They control the weather. But again, this is a bifurcated war. He leans right, so he's not blaming capitalism or Republicans or fossil fuels. He's blaming secret government because right wing is anti-government. Left wing loves government. They hate the private sector. They hate capitalism. So left wing says they are screwing up the weather, but they blame, of course, capitalism, free market. All right, here it is. Elon Musk running an advertisement for the future Mars bases.
Hello there. I'm here to show you a wonderful place. A veritable Camelot of the nuclear age. Not made by God Almighty, but the working man. You can be a hero by purchasing a residence in a Vault-Tec vault today. Because if the worst should happen tomorrow, the world is going to need you to build a better day after.
Okay, this is from Fallout, which is about to be released. It was mislabeled on the tweet. It's not a literal advertisement for Mars bases, but it pretty much is. And Fallout takes place in, I believe, Vault number 33, interestingly. It says the end of the world is not what it used to be. Interesting. Again, Vault 33. Now, it's not the same as Sublevel 33, where they keep Godzilla. But what is it with this Subterranean 33 thing? Brandon MDM says the old everything bagel. You know, I just watched Everything Everywhere All at Once. I've been having some strange synchronicities ever since I watched Griselda. And I was commenting on the scene where the character is reading Labyrinths by Jorge Borges. And he's got a scorpion on his hand and a watch. And he's talking about breaking the cycles of time. And I'd correlated this with the death card, the end of a cycle. And the cycle, the sickle, the circle being all correlated in this concept of linear time being habit more than a necessity, but only a habit for those who don't make conscious decisions to break the cycle, to diverge. And the book Labyrinths that the character was reading delves into this idea that the decisions that you make create an entirely new reality. Like we're not in one reality that we're all just sharing, but that every choice is a different turn in this labyrinth. It's an interesting concept. So I'm talking about this, and then somebody said, you got to read this book, Reality Transurfing, which is this philosophical book on choices and probability and about intentionality and synchronicity. Things I've been kind of connecting here. I've been suggesting here that synchronicity itself suggests that we are in a cybernetic system, that we're like bats using echolocation, that our intentionality projected into the future, into the potential, has that whatever we're thinking about, if you have any kind of meaningful correlation or synchronistic event, you could consider that feedback in this sense. So I've been discussing these things, and someone says, you got to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I did, and it's a crazy movie, but it lives up to its title. But it really delves into this idea of the choices that we make and the splintering of reality, but it suggests that these different realities all exist concurrently. And this is kind of what I've been arriving at lately. I've been saying that I don't believe in the universe in the sense that it's described to us. Like we have the rear view, mirror view of it, and then we have our future concepts of what it could be. But I'm not entirely convinced that it exists until we experience it, and that until then it's just dark matter, nothing but that we are faced with all probabilities and possibilities equal distant from us at this moment, but we go on this linear path more or less out of habit and because we're steered with this massive hive mind they've created. But we've been discussing these things and synchronicity and how it all does tie in to the elite's symbolic system and how their main deity seems to be Saturn, the god of, time and constriction and judgment. We're talking about time and the material realm, so time and space. And synchronicity is all about being in the right place at the right time, which has to do with your own decisions and choices and how things unfold. But anyway, I watched that movie last night. I would recommend it, sure. I mean, I had to watch it in like 3 different sittings. It's pretty intense. It's actually quite funny. It's absurd, but it's profound as well. Mango Penguin says, great movie. Well, here's another point about it, though, because I mentioned when I was talking about this last week, I mentioned the movie Free Guy about NPCs in a simulation. And the free guy begins to wake up when he begins to make choices, even meaningless choices. Like instead of wearing this suit, he's going to wear this one that looks the exact same, but it's further down the closet. Instead of turning left, he's going to turn right. So he starts breaking his pattern. And the more he breaks his pattern and exercises will, intentionality, the more reality opens up to him. And he enters into a reality quite unlike his programmed one. Like the Truman Show, breaking out of the Truman Show. Well, what was the prison there? It wasn't physical bars, it was habit. Habitually going along with the program, listening to the lies, not going outside of that echo chamber. So Free Guy was about exercising free will to break free of this false paradigm. Truman Show was the same thing. The false man became a Truman. And in the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, in order to access improbabilities, the characters would have to do really strange things, like absurd things. To get out of a tight situation, one had to give herself 4 paper cuts because the probability of getting 4 paper cuts is just so minute that it opened up this access point to access this other timeline. And that sounds absurd, but it's really no different than sorcery, magic, lucky charms, crossing the fingers, all these irrational things. And in the movie, they make the point about the less sense it makes, the better. And it's because you're breaking from the conscious mind, the left brain stranglehold over reality and accessing not the solar of the conscious mind, but the lunar side, the unconscious, the lunacy. And this is all part of alchemy anyway, the worldview of having the solar and the lunar, the 2 aspects of the mind, and how in order to do magic, one has to delve into the dark. So this movie had some correlation, I think, between basic concepts of probability manipulation through what we would call magic, sorcery. Fascinating stuff. Dewis in Paris says we'll have to watch that movie, my kind of thing. Yeah, it's really incredible. It really is. I was really I mean, look, it has some parts in there I couldn't even describe to you without sounding insane, but it definitely follows the title very well. Isabel N says synchros are an extraordinary to get your attention. Dwayne Garrett says chaos magic in a sense. Yeah, the premise behind chaos magic, as really, I think the group is called the IoT, the Illuminatis of Thanateros. They separated magical traditions from the mythologies, from the Judeo-Christian framework, and just went to the fundamentals. Like, what are these so-called magicians doing in order to, in their view, change or influence reality? And when you break it down to the fundamentals, the techniques, it seems like everything has to do with, according to the theories behind chaos magic, distracting what it calls the psychic sensor. Your sense of things as they are, your worldview that's more or less cemented, the way you see things out of habit, and how do you break that? And it suggests you break that through what you would consider to be ritual or other means. Sigil magic, for example, all presupposes that you can send a message to your higher self that isn't bound by time space, that can give you access to these improbable realities. But the only way to get that message in is to bypass this filter that maintains order. So to access the chaos, how do you bypass it? And there's a whole list of techniques or practices from, like yoga, meditation, but most of these involve altering one's consciousness. Mizell says it'd be fun to have a movie night. Yeah, I always thought it'd be. We used to actually do that. We used to watch a few movies, but it's very useful to watch these movies critically and see what you can extract from them. Like I happen to enjoy the propaganda. Knowing what it is doesn't detract from my enjoyment of it from the level of aesthetics. I mean, these actors are good, the art is good, the music, it's all really good, but it's all just obviously it has a higher purpose or whatever you want to call it, an ulterior purpose. Thirst super chat 9.99. Appreciate that very much. Thank you for keeping the gas in the tank. Duis in Paris says ties into the concept of us being given their mind. Maybe the left side of our brain is there, used to co-opt our creative right brain. Yeah, I happen to think that much of the programming, especially when it comes to archetypal symbolism, colors, a lot of the stuff bypasses our conscious recognition, and we wouldn't be able to focus on it all. We would go crazy. Like the Truman Show, when I watched that, it was kind of a paradigm shift for me because I realized that there's a layer of meaning to movies that you couldn't possibly expect the general ticket buyer to pick up on. So I thought either these are Easter eggs meant for the amusement of a few, or, and what I arrived at later, we're downloading all that crap into our deep mind. It's all forming the infrastructure of our worldview. And it doesn't matter if you pay attention or not. It's all building up there. And what I mean is, if your subconscious isn't separating real from fake, now you have scenarios in your head. Falling buildings, falling planes, infected people running around and you have to hide in your homes. So you fill up your imagination with this without your conscious mind even recognizing what you're absorbing through repetition. And then later, they frame something in the news in a certain way that accesses memories in that same filing cabinet that bring back the same emotions, that the imagery corresponds. So I kind of think that we're always being programmed. All right, and look, and I've looked into hoodoo, folk magic, various varieties of it from around the world. I've always found it to be very interesting. Superstition has always been interesting to me, what they call superstition. But what the chaos magic movement did is it took away the literalism. Like, no, there's nothing intrinsically meaningful about a bag with some coins or some stuff in it, some oils. Like you have all these like mojo bags, for example. Like this is just a collection of random objects in a bag in one's pocket. It can't possibly have any kind of qualities to it. It's not magic in that sense. But the idea here is that by having these symbolic objects put together in a certain context by someone that you believe has some kind of power tricks your conscious mind that knows better into temporarily becoming superstitious. In fact, I've heard this referred to as the suspension of, I think it's the suspension of disbelief. So the suspension of disbelief is a prerequisite for believing in things that are, or rather for bypassing your conscious mind's stranglehold over reality and allowing your subconscious to have some kind of perspective, whether this manifests as intuition or your attention being drawn to things in a synchronistic way that leads you to certain choices. But we're talking about accessing realities that aren't immediately visible to you at your level of conscious awareness. That's really just your awareness is derived from your senses, your terrestrial survival, but your intuition has more insights, according to this concept of magic, but that you can't access that unless you can somehow defeat your ego. Brandon says, when faced with a paradox, one should get paradoxical. Dwayne Garrett says, constant programming. You either program yourself or allow other people to. Yeah, that's absolutely the case, that the programming is by default. Next comment says, I don't watch their movies. They are violent, dystopian, and very depressing. That's absolutely the case as well. And it's not just in the movies, it's in the music. I looked back at music I used to listen to, and you might like the music because of the sound. Maybe you like heavy guitar and drums and all this stuff, and you listen to it and you go back and you're like, well, what was I actually hearing in my head? What was being repeated? And I'm like, wow, this is just like CNN with guitars and drums and snares and scarier aesthetics, but they're just talking about the world ending, man deserves it. A lot of repetition there. And when you see the news, then, like, let's say you're not a news consumer, but you get your entertainment, your media from other sources, and then you watch the news and you're like, oh, look, the sky's falling. And you're like, yeah, just life is imitating art, art imitates life. But I don't really feel like it influences me. I'm too optimistic. I don't believe necessarily that even the worst projections they give us are going to manifest as such, even though we may internally accept it. I mean, I go outside, I enjoy the skies. I think it's beautiful. I like the long plumes of ice, the condensed ice, the condensation, the contrails. But then others go out and they want to mask up and put on PPE and wear an umbrella and start carrying a sign saying the end is near, genocide, they're poisoning us, we're all going to die. I'm like, well, look, we're experiencing the same skies, but you're having a stress attack. I'm feeling aesthetic arrest. Like psychosomatically, you're killing yourself. You're giving yourself chemtrail lung. All right, moving on. Here's another example. This is Fight the Flat Earth Gloating. Today has been a bad day to be a flat earther. You guys can deny reality as long as you want. It's not going to stop coming. More and more space flights, moon base on the way. Becoming an interplanetary species. You dumbasses can stay in the dark ages. We don't want you with us anyway. Feelings mutual. Go to your deep underground Mars base. Go deeper into Plato's cave. You're already in one mentally. Your internal worldview is a Plato's cave at this point. Now you want to go into some deep underground Mars base. Now you're in a literal cave. Go, please. We don't care. This is so ironic, the lack of insight here. I'm not denying reality. I'm not saying reality doesn't exist or it's not as I perceive it. I am rejecting augmentations. I'm rejecting their hyperstitional reality. Yeah, it's confirmed by everything you see in the media, but for me, from my perspective, it's flat and stationary unless I consult your magic screens, unless I listen to your priesthood. So I'm not in denial. You are augmenting your reality because you cannot see any curve. You cannot feel the earth moving. Everything you claim to know is coming through that filter. So I'm not a reality denialist. I'm just not a reality augmenter. And they don't really have a position to be saying that we are somehow lacking or deficit or somehow in any way missing anything. Like they're adding to the picture here. Eventually, though, something's going to happen. They're going to have to provide a very convincing moon base. And if they do, let's say they have a moon base by next year. It's going to be the same. It's going to be like with the ISS. It's going to be terrible special effects. It's going to be those of us on the ground calling it fake, and they're going to say it's real. They're not going to improve their special effects. Dwayne Garrett says moon base will never happen. Well, chances are if it does happen, it will be beneath the surface. Same with the Mars bases. They have to terraform first. They're not going to be bouncing around on the surface. And they may actually do robots to space first. I mean, drones, cyborgs. Why would they send real people? They will come up with some reason to not. All right, moving on. We talked about the subway event. Is it fake? Is it real? Honeybell said they have a whole police precinct in the same exact station. Again, that's another indicator. It's probably hoaxed. I'm going to watch it again. But the guy who shot the man won't be charged. We'll find out what the story was. I thought he had shot himself. All right, I think I want to skip over this last story. CNN did a breakdown on chemtrailers, but there were a couple of points here I thought they made that might be worth repeating here. And it's stuff that I've observed, but this is fascinating because they're using the term believers in the sense that I use it. And it says the collective agreement within these communities overpowers the rational dissent of scientists. This makes it exceedingly difficult to factually correct or alter these deeply entrenched beliefs. Now, you could take this statement and replace the word scientists with skeptics, with auto-hoaxers. The collective agreement within these communities, will say the communities of moon believers or moon landing believers, all these people who believe in outer space, for example, their collective agreement overpowers all rational dissent. Same for every other issue. The collective agreement is really the dominant factor here. It's a belief-based worldview, and the hive mind nature of it can't be understated. We all lived through 2020. Commenter says, we don't know who they are. Maybe they are us and we are creating them. I try to stick to, right now we're dealing with a propaganda war and a universal media and a universal government, which is the universal religion. Beyond that, it's interesting to try to determine who's behind it all, but the common threads: Mystery Babylon, the Earth God motif, the obelisk to rocket, the concept of the cycles of life and death, the descent into matter and transcendence. There's a story here. Who's behind it 100%? I don't know, but that's something I'm comfortable saying. Like, I don't know. That's why we're doing this. If we knew everything, if we had all the answers, we wouldn't be here every night trying to find the answers. We're not smugly sitting atop of a bunch of explanations handed to us by the lying media and lazily just accepting what they've told us. No, we're actually doing the work of questioning, suspending judgment, and taking responsibility for those questions and finding the answers and recognizing the boundaries between knowledge and belief, and not claiming to know things that we can merely conjecture about. Like, this is really the most honest place in the world right now, if you ask me. Because the other people who know what we know are part of the lie world order's infrastructure. The people on this side of the screen are the deceivers, the operatives, at various levels of awareness, but they're all doing so in bad faith for the purposes of manipulation and mind control. And here we are, for the purposes of, I guess, education. We are trying to inform ourselves. We are in, good faith, using the same information, but we're not gatekeeping it. We're not obscuring it. We're trying to elucidate. So yeah, this is the most honest place on the internet. Way more honest than Trutherville. Isabel Ann says, I can see it being very easy to run a NYC subway Psyop. They block off entrances all the time. Well, a couple of years ago, when the prophet of doom, Frank James, shot up the subway with 33 rounds, there were no cameras on that cart. Like, how does that happen? No cameras? It wasn't recorded? There's a link in chat if you want to join the Parallel Media community on X. Again, we are outside of the alt media, which is controlled. We are in the parallel media, new terrain, outside of their control, outside of the bounds of their controlled opposition. They consider this area to be toxic. They won't come out here. And we need to continue to move out this way, further and further away from Trutherville, so we can see that those with 1 foot in Trutherville and 1 foot stepping into skepticism are going to have to make the choice. Are you going to stay in the matrix, or are you going to step outside the box, My objective is to get 10,000 of us on the same sheet before the election, and I think we can make that happen. All right, this has been great. This is Where's the Curve? I'll see you all in Folded.
Upside down and zoom in on the people walking round. The people walking round upside down. You got a balloon, I got a balloon. Boats reappear with zoom, they reappear with zoom. The horizon line is flat, center sky it looks the same. Of my senses at peace upon the plain. Some